Hello, this is Joe Trahan, welcoming you to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, whose mission is to enlighten the world to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances. As the national leader on this subject, they communicate their educational messages through various methods, including this podcast. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the All Me podcast. This is Don Hooten Jr., and today I'll be your host. Our goal on this podcast is to try and focus on everything that revolves around our mission, which is to enlighten the world to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances. In today's interview, I'm going to be speaking with another member of the anti-doping movement. We're so lucky today to have Keith McLemore from Steroidalysis talking about what inspired him to get into the world of anti-doping and why he's so passionate about trying to keep young people in the gym away from anabolic steroids. Because of the work we do here at the Taylor Hooten Foundation and Keith's work with Steroidalysis, our paths and lives crossed and we quickly became friends. Keith is a guy who knows his way around the gym and has always trained without the use of drugs. Along the way, one of his closest friends who he trained with had his life cut short because of the decision he made to use anabolic steroids. Listen to Keith as he shares his life story. I hope it will impact you as much as it impacted me. On behalf of the Taylor Hooten Foundation, thank you for all your continued support. We hope you will subscribe to this podcast so that you won't miss a future episode. Please consider making a donation to the Taylor Hooten Foundation to help us continue impacting lives around the world. Let's talk all things anti-doping with my buddy Keith. Keith, welcome to the All Me podcast, my friend.
Hey, Don, how are you?
I'm doing great. Can't complain. Never will complain. But I just wanted to thank you first for joining us on the show. Where are you calling in from today?
We're calling in from Chicago today.
The Windy City. I don't know why they call it the Windy City, though. I've never really been there, and it's never been that windy. Why is it called the Windy City?
Well, we do have our fair share of wind. I think the wind that you're referring to is some of the politics. So one of the, this goes way back, but they noticed how windy our political arguments were. So I think that's the majority of the reason why we have that. But it does get windy, especially downtown in some of the canyons of the high rises. But concentrates wind, so it's multiple reasons.
Interesting. Okay. Nobody's ever explained it to me that way. So, Keith, did you grow up in Chicago? Is that where your family's from?
Yeah. So predominantly Chicagoland area. Although my comings and goings have me bouncing along the East Coast, and every once in a while a trip through Eastern Europe. But yeah, predominantly here in the Chicagoland area.
Okay, great. So I know we've always discussed weather and everything, and I love Chicago. Chicago is one of my most favorite cities. I particularly enjoy going in the summertime, not Chicago wintertime. It's too cold. But I always look forward to going because typically you and I get to hang out. We'll catch a baseball game and always find the best pizza.
Yes, deep dish Chicago style pizza. It's a must every time you come here.
I'm missing it, man. It's been over a year. I'm hoping this year is a little bit different and we can get back to, doing our pizza in Chicago in the summertime.
Well, we'll hope, man. But if it doesn't happen, I'll just have to express mail you some pizza and some Garrett's popcorn. And even though this is going to blow this whole fitness thing that we have going, but we'll do it.
I hear you. And it's kind of an interesting leeway into our conversation. They don't go hand in hand, but I know that you're interested in working out, lifting weights, you're interested in fitness. What age did you get interested in the world of fitness? And, let's start there.
Yeah, I would probably say college, maybe the first years of college or the latter years of high school. Thanks to Cynthia Robinson, you try and appeal to, some of the people in your life, or you're trying to prepare for what's going to happen on campus. You're making connections. You're seeing that they're into fitness. You're seeing the type of fitness facilities that you've never been exposed to. So that's usually how, people end up there. And then also when you're working, if you're working in a loop, or if you're working in Manhattan, in New York, or wherever you're working, you're also treating that as a way station, just a place to really engage in some clean happy hour activities without the alcohol. You're waiting for your evening traffic to die down, whether it's on the expressways or your commuter train. And so that's why and how I got into physical fitness.
Okay. So you more on like the cardio side, running, CrossFit, or you more into just strictly lifting weights? Tell us more about, what your interest is within the fitness world.
Well, it currently is more so on the lifting. When I was younger, of course, it used to be bodybuilding, but, there is a cardio component. So you wouldn't really classify that as CrossFit, because CrossFit has taken on its own meaning.
Yeah.
It's a sport in of itself, so you don't want to confuse the conversation. If you're going to do bodybuilding, you're going to have to do some cardio, a lot of cardio. You're going to have to be really disciplined when it comes to your diet and your nutritional intake. So for me, it was predominantly, weightlifting and bodybuilding.
Okay. And from the bodybuilding aspect, did you ever have an opportunity or any desire to compete?
Probably early on, but as I saw, some of the competitors, some of the gym friends who were competing here in the Chicago area and then on the national stage, seeing what they go through, seeing how it beat up the body, how the amount of time that was required to engage in that removed them from other things, from other people in their life. It was something that I really didn't need to do. Also, I was really dedicated to my own family. I was also dedicated to my own career. So there's only so many hours in a day. You have to be really realistic about what fitness is. So bodybuilding is not a sport. It's a beauty pageant, if you will, even though it involves some, really, even bodybuilders would admit to that. It's not a sport. It doesn't require, coordination with, other team members, and it doesn't really require strategy other than, your fitness schedule or maybe seeing how your body responds, but everybody does that. And especially as it relates to the use of steroids, it really doesn't require what people think it requires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anybody that's been in and around the bodybuilding industry will know that it is very time consuming. And especially if you want to compete, you've got to be extremely diligent with your diet. You're not missing any of your training sessions. So it makes it really hard. I mean, if you've got a demanding career, you've got a family, like you said, Keith, there's only so many hours in the day. And especially when you get into training for a competition, you're into bodybuilding physique, it takes up a lot of time as well. The other thing that you mentioned is, that is an industry that's just full of the use of anabolic steroids. And having known you for many years, I know you're a guy that likes to work out. You've developed strength naturally. Hopefully next time I'm up there in Chicago, we'll get a workout in together. But
we will.
We'll see who can bench press more weight at our old age. My shoulders don't hold up like they used to, but I probably can throw 135 pounds around every now and then. But
yes, you can, and you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'll be sore the next day too.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, with you spending so much time in the gym, working on your fitness and strength, have you ever thought about using anabolic steroids?
I personally never thought so. When I was working out, that was in the late 80s, the very late 80s or in the early 90s. So even though it was really gaining a popularity, it wasn't the thing that we see now. So, of course, we didn't have social media. We really didn't even have internet then to really sort of act as a pathogen for the concept of casual steroid use. But when I was working out, the biggest craze was trying to see how much protein you could consume, and trying to distinguish sort of those tubs of old school protein versus the new whey protein. It was really, creatine had just come on the market. A lot of people really didn't even understand creatine. There were some things that, if you remember the muscle magazines, there was one called like Muscle and Fitness. You had a Muscle Mag. You had all of those, and those were just really ways of just pushing every supplement and advertising it, especially in the back of the magazine, even though there was some big sheets and a lot of coverage all throughout each of the magazines. So you had Test Boosters, a Muscle Mag that was based in Ontario, Canada, sort of opened up some retail shops here in North America, including in a suburb of Chicago here, as well as in downtown Chicago. I know that the government even caught a lot of those stores with, test boosters that were illegal and that are still illegal.
Yeah.
So that was the craze. It wasn't really steroids. You did have a seller in the gym, an occasional user seller, and some of those were my friends, and I didn't make the connection that the reason why they were big, the reason why they were able to have longer workouts or really sprint a little bit faster or lift a whole lot more weight than I was lifting, I didn't associate that with steroids. I was just completely ignorant until I began to see what was going on, and until I began to see some of the side effects that they were suffering from. And then slowly but surely, I really made the connection then.
Yeah, and that was really early on, and I believe at the time anabolic steroids were legal. I mean, you could see a doctor to get a prescription for testosterone, and people were using a lot of drugs back then. So, and if you had friends that were dealing in the gym, I'm sure at some point you were approached to use anabolic steroids and might have been tempted, but with the knowledge that you had then and then the knowledge that you have now, obviously it was the right decision not to use anabolic steroids. But I mean, really at the time, what motivated you just to stay, hey, I'm going to stay clean. I'm just going to train and be all me?
Great question. I think it was maybe two main factors with respect to that. We did have people in the gym who I classify as being gym elders. And so the thing that I notice and the thing that I preach in the gym is that most people will revert to steroids because of the fact that they really are not getting the gains through natural means. And the reason why they aren't is that they really have bad form. So they have bad expectations. They really have bad form. They're just really displacing the weight. They're not really mastering the weight. And so it's not showing up on their physique. That was my early going problem until one or two of the gym elders who were natural actually pulled me to the side and said, hey, look, Keith, you really have to rework your form. So I did. I listened to them and I saw results. I didn't need to do the steroids. I was seeing the results naturally. So as a result, that's one of the many lessons that I convey as I am in, gyms both here in Chicago as well as in New York. And it's true. So really form is everything. It's everything to your ability to really sort of string along a bunch of body parts that are going to help you achieve your objective. If you want to achieve a good bench press, you're going to have good delts, and you're going to have good triceps, and they're going to have to really work in concert with each other. And so that's form. So that is what got me away. But the other part of your question is we did have people who, even though they wouldn't approach me, they would approach other people, and they would approach them on the open floor. I think I learned that how they would do that would be not to approach a newbie. That's too green of a prospect. What they would do is they would see a person who is a regular in the gym, who they know, who they can trust to really keep their mouth shut. But they're also approaching that person who seems like they want to go to the next level. And so that's how they make the connection. Nowadays, what they do is, what I've seen in the various gyms is everyone knows that one guy is a gym seller. So that gym seller will take his cell phone and put it on the floor next to a machine and then walk away. If someone's interested in steroids, they'll go pick up that phone and send him a text with their contact information. And then, so that's how it works nowadays.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And the one great thing about the path you chose, obviously, not taking illegal drugs and putting, potentially harmful substances in your body, but you've done it the right way. You've learned the form. You've mastered really an art. And now you can teach that to young kids. You don't need to say, hey, buy the latest cycle of anabolic steroids. Let me show you, guys and gals, how to do things the right way. And it all starts with any sport, really. It's just going back to the basics and mastering form and technique. So you also talk about the ease of being able to purchase anabolic steroids, Keith, and you and I are so close to this topic. We get it. It makes sense. But when you talk to the general public about the ease of buying anabolic steroids, it's almost like their eyes get real big. Like, what are you talking about? Is it really that easy to purchase anabolic steroids? So let's say I'm in a gym. You're saying, if I would be working out there pretty regularly, I would see who everybody's probably going to get their juice. And, basically this guy or gal would leave their phone unlocked, and I could go over there and send a text message and say, hey, I'm interested in anabolic steroids. And ultimately that's how a deal could be made in today's world.
That's how it's done when you're physically in the gym. But of course, predominantly today, it's a social media thing. So I've come across with the name of my website and then also social media presence, sharing the same name, Steroidalysis. Sometimes it confuses people and they think it's a pro steroid. So we'll receive a ton of solicitations to be a part of a supply chain that we really don't want to be. But a lot of that, overwhelming majority of that, is really social media. There are a lot of Facebook pages that are pro steroid. And so Facebook is constantly trying to review that. I think that they're going to step up their game a little bit more. It's associated with the opioid crisis. It's not just steroids. It's also part of the steroid stack, which may include HGH. So with that said, back in the day, you had to be careful. You really didn't know your supplier. You didn't know if your steroids was coming from Mexico, even though majority of it was coming from either Mexico or Eastern Europe, and you really didn't know if it was cut with Windex. Yep. Nowadays, it's a different story. It's coming from other places, but of course, nowadays the user still is quite ignorant as to where that's coming from. Yep. They're ordering it with ease, but a lot of people don't know. A lot of their steroids is really being made in China and in Iran. Who knew, right?
Exactly.
So what are you ingesting, and are you willing to take a risk that it's not also laced with something else that's going to be detrimental? Right?
Exactly. And one of the things, Keith, we actually have a podcast, two podcasts that we did about drugs and anabolic steroids being sold on social media sites. In fact, we did a report with the Digital Citizens Alliance, and the topic of the report was social media on steroids and how the ease of just purchasing these drugs on whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's quite easy, actually, as you said, to purchase these drugs. And that's just even more reason we need to continue working together to educate people. Now, I know you have a personal story of losing a friend, and that's kind of how our paths crossed, because obviously I lost my younger brother, Taylor. We're both in the anti-doping space, thus our paths and lives cross. So, and I know his story gives you inspiration for the work that you do in anti-doping and the messages that you push out. Can you talk more about your friend? What happened to him? How did he get into using anabolic steroids, and ultimately, what path that led him down in life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that history is similar. So in my case, it wasn't a family member. It was just a person in the gym. His first name is Greg. I won't mention his last name out of respect for the family, but he was already a fixture in the gym, as well as maybe a couple of other, you know how you have a pot of steroid users who are there. Mm-hmm. They own the gym, you know, they sort of maybe define the space. So Greg was a guy who was always competition ready. And he had 2 daughters. And one thing that we all appreciated, it was almost a family situation, but he never ridiculed people who were either newbies or who weren't in the same sort of physical shape that he was in. Mm-hmm. So that was great. We used to go to his NPC qualifier competitions, whether they be in Chicago or nearby Rockford, Illinois. So that was great. Again, never really made the connection that he looked the way he did because of the steroids that he was taking. I would say probably around 2003, 2004, he started to suffer some of the major side effects that we know about. Major side effects really being, you know, organ failure, some of the, you know, depression that is associated with the roid rage that we know about, the heart attack, which is the leading cause of death amongst wrestlers and steroid users and bodybuilders who die at a very early age. In the case of Greg, he died from the second leading cause of death, which is really lymphatic cancer. So you have these lymph nodes that are all over your body that help to distribute testosterone. And so if you're taking artificial testosterone, it's going there too. So his lymphatic cancer was right in front of his pituitary, right behind his eye. And it was so aggressive, Don, that it began to push his eyeball right out of the socket. Oh, man. So he had to wear an eye patch while he was wrestling with this. Every once in a while in the gym, he would flash us with his eye, you know, hanging out just for kicks. Yeah. But he was a good guy. And I'd say by 2004, it was obvious something was going on. He couldn't retain his muscle mass, even though he was able to retain his cuts. So he was still sort of competition ready. He was still competing in his weight class and also in the master's class. Something was going on. So he finally confessed to us, hey, what was going on? This was at Valley Total Fitness, and we knew, but he also was going to pass on some information before whatever happened, including some really good tips in order to get the bodybuilder look without doing steroid. Mm-hmm. So he finally passed away on us in 2006. Mm. And at the funeral, Don, the whole gym really came out. So that was just emotion you couldn't really believe. If this gym was packed with a bunch of really good people, unfortunately, how they came to pay respects outweighed all of that. Mm-hmm. So they came in their gym attire. They came, a few of them hulked up themselves on steroids. And so when the mom and when the family saw this, it crushed them because it was like rubbing it in their faces. The parents were so emotional, more emotional than they otherwise would be, because number one, you're never supposed to bury your kid, especially when you know that the death was totally preventable. It just occurred because of a wrong mindset, mm-hmm. you know? And so his mom, I could never really forget the expression on her face when person after person who was juiced up came to pay their respects, and they're well intended, but they don't really know that the true message that they're conveying. So that's what started Steroid Analysis. That's what started the T-shirt, just in this tank.
That's very interesting, and I'm sorry for your loss. And I know Greg appreciates, you sharing his story. And like you said, it is preventable. It definitely is. But that story just reminds me so much of when my younger brother passed away, which was in 2003. And you had some of the young men at his funeral, the viewing, that you could clearly tell, at 16, 17, 18 years old, they've got a lot of muscle mass for a young person that age. I mean, you saw the acne, and you saw some, the jaundice of the skin, and many of the other textbook side effects that go along with anabolic steroids. By chance, do you know how long Greg was using anabolic steroids?
Oh man, Greg probably, I would say Well, I really can't say because he was already at the gym and he was already competition ready. He got a few guys and one gal on it, and so he was on there for a while. The only thing, the really sad thing to know and to see, Don, is when there's a bodybuilder who dies at 88 pounds.
Yeah.
It totally, and he's not the only one. I mean, there's another case of a guy who was well known in muscle fitness magazines. His name was Art Atwood. That may ring a bell to some of the people who are listening, but Art Atwood used to live in southern Wisconsin, and he used to come down. Well, so first of all, he had a really large body mass, and he was never known for cutting in advance of competition. He wasn't one of those big guys. He was just going to be a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like Frank Zane, who had a lot of cuts. He wasn't too big, even though Frank Zane did take steroids.
Yeah.
But Frank Zane had a narrow waist. That was a different type of bodybuilding. But Art Atwood used to come down to the North Shore, the northern suburbs of the city, on his way to different bodybuilding shows, whether it's in the city or in Rockford, Illinois, or, Chicago has a nightlife. And so whenever Art would want to hang out, he would make sure he was pumped up and, tight before he did those things. But every once in a while, he would come to my gym. And honestly, to see him walk maybe 30 feet from one machine to another machine, completely out of breath.
Wow.
The rest of us in the gym knew what was up. His heart couldn't take it.
Mm-hmm.
So he moved, of all places, from southern Wisconsin to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
In September of 2011, he was hosting a Labor Day party and had a heart attack and died on that day. And so when this keeps happening over and over and over again, so now I know a total of 6 people that this has happened to,
Man.
That's so that's the impetus that really makes you have to see the process through with the website Steroidalysis, and then also No Juice in This Tank.
Yeah, and I mean it's obviously something that comes out of a personal passion that you're doing to help others. And again, thank you for sharing your story and your knowledge, and also helping those young people that are at the gym that are looking to find their way, because especially when we're young, we all think we need to have, whether it's that big physique, the 6-pack ab look, just being cut. And especially in today's world, we're looking for what is the shortest distance to get from point A to point B to where I want to be. And, there's, especially when it comes to bodybuilding and changing your physical appearance, there is no shortcut outside of hard work and a really good nutrition plan. So I want to shift and talk, and you've referenced it, about steroidanalysis.com. And we know the genesis behind why you started it, but what are the missions and the goals that you're trying to accomplish with this website and this movement?
Yeah, great question. What the objective is to fill in the gaps. So currently there's just a one-sided argument. Steroids is good. Mm-hmm. You're having more arguments about HGH. You're even seeing that on regular TV commercials that are talking about HGH. And so the purpose of that is to really prime the market. That's seriously what anything does. Even if you're talking just a regular company, they want to prime the market, the prospects, with the idea of taking HGH with their starter product. And so that's what's happening. So it's a one-sided argument. What we do is we try and balance that argument. We talk about what they never talk about, which are the side effects, which are the scandals, which are really truths. So the steroid world is really full of lies. You take this steroid, you'll still put in the work. That's not true. You never put in the work. That chemical is asking your muscle to reproduce abnormally so it can do the work. They never talk about your increased risk of cancer or your increase or your heart attacks, or the fact that steroids will go to the muscle that you use the most, that in your heart. And so that's the reason why heart attacks usually end up being the leading cause of death among steroid users and wrestlers. So we try and expose all that stuff. And usually I do it online, but sometimes I do it really, man to man, or I'll have lectures at a gym and I'll take an abrasive tone. It gets the job done, but usually it will turn a majority of the people that cross my path, it'll turn it into an alternate direction. And that's what we want.
Exactly. And because, again, you've now supplied them the knowledge, but then you have the ability to show them how to do things the right way versus, you have a lot of the adult influencers out there, and it's no blame on them, but it's like, hey, you need to get bigger, or you need to get faster, or in order to do this, you need to get stronger. Maybe, Keith, you need to lose weight. And these folks that are saying this just aren't prepared with, okay, what does my diet regimen look like? What does my workout schedule look like? And I think that is where all of these industries need to come together to work together to provide people with that solution, so that they understand how they can get from point A to point B and do it safely. Now, if I'm a user out there, I'm going to put all of this in the show notes for everybody if they can click on Steroidalysis and go there. But what sort of information is somebody going to find when they come to your website?
Yeah, it's either the website or the social media page, or both, actually. They're going to find topics as it relates to steroid deaths. Some of the real reasons why some of the noted bodybuilders have died, i.e. Dallas McCarver. There was this misinformation that he died, he choked while he was eating. Who knew that he actually had a heart attack while he was eating lunch? Mm-hmm. Or, some of the steroid scandals. We're in a rescheduled Olympic year, so we're still talking about the ongoing Russian, state-sponsored program that's meant to assure them Olympic medals, and really new technology in order to try and evade detection. We talk about that. We talk about a lot of the short-term and long-term effects of steroid use. We just talked about those organ failures. Mm-hmm. We talk about the fact that when a person has a heart attack from steroid use, that heart attack is much more violent, much more painful than the heart attacks that we know and that we hear our senior, family members having. You're still young. You still really have all your nerve endings. It's just that it's more violent and more painful when you have a younger person who is taking steroids. It causes your heart to enlarge. Your heart wall thins, and then it pops. So usually you have a heart attack, and you have that also combined with a stroke. That's much more violent than a senior citizen, a person in the 70s and 80s having a heart attack and fading away.
Yeah. And
we talk about some of the unique side effects that are not discussed. There's an image of a person whose arms exploded. We saw that on a documentary in one of the cable stations several years ago, but this has actually happened. Abscesses are really common too. And no one would ever take these steroids if they were exposed to this side of the story. That's what we do. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, in order for anybody to make a well-rounded, educated decision, whether that's using legal substances like alcohol or tobacco, or illicit drugs like anabolic steroids, I mean, we need to have a well-rounded education as far what are the pros, what are the cons, what do these things do to our body, where do they come from, and we've talked about all that stuff. Now, one of the interesting things that you say on your website is you refer to young people getting a lot of disinformation regarding anabolic steroids. What do you mean when you say young people are getting disinformation?
Well, so there's an information void. Mm-hmm. There's an information void because of content, that's being really propagated out there that really only gives the glowing attributes. But then, so again, I think that maybe we touched on that earlier. Information about the fact that you're going to be still putting in the work, even though you're going to be taking steroids. You won't. Or there's, disinformation in terms of what you'll be really able to achieve if you're on steroids. No one's even given a timeline of when you're going to see all of the pros of the steroids, but then when a lot of the cons are going to kick in. A lot of the users are not even aware of the fact that after, I'd say, a good 8 to 10 years, your side effects start to kick in and they really start to manifest themselves.
Yeah.
But by that time, you not only have you appreciated all of the upside of taking steroids, other people who are seeing you are now motivated to take those steroids. But as is the case with any product, any commercial product, a new box of cereal, a new wrench, there is a concerted, effort to market that product, to target any and all potential users, and then to try and walk the product and the user through the life cycle of the product. Mm-hmm. The same thing happens with users of steroids, the entire supply chain, from your supplier, some of which who make other farmers, including aspirin, and then you'll have your brokers, you'll have your distributors, you'll have your runners who will run it off from the distributor in lower, incremental sizes. They will introduce them to either coaches or personal trainers in the gym, and then to the user groups. And so that is a supply chain that really rivals any product on the commercial side. Yeah. And they have the same infrastructure in order to perpetrate that enterprise. Mm-hmm. And a part of it is marketing. Just like you market that product, they market steroids. It's the same way. And so they have to disinform the public, or else the public wouldn't be so naive as to take it.
You're right. And that's why education is so important. And what I tell parents and adult influencers and anybody that we have an opportunity to talk to is you have to sit down and talk to your young people. You have to educate yourself. You have to be able to educate them, because if we don't, they will get the information they're looking for at a local gym, or they'll get the bad information somewhere online. And it's always, like you said, one side, all the positive. Yeah, you're going to put on weight. You're going to look great. You're going to be bench pressing more weight. You're going to burn so much fat. But nobody's sitting there telling them, well, there are a lot of risks associated with this reward that can go along, whether it's short term or even long term, and potentially this stuff can lead to death. So, that's why we can continue, just you and I always, been working together for years, but just continue to educate and talk to people about this.
Absolutely.
So what other avenues do you use to help provide anti-doping messages? So we know that you've got your website. You mentioned you're on social media. What social media pages are you on, and how would one find you?
It's the same keyword for all of them, which is steroid analysis. Okay. You'll find the page on both Instagram as well as on Twitter. In the coming weeks and months, I think we're going to really focus more attention on those. That seems to be generating more interest than the traditional webpage, even though we will be keeping that up, and we will continue to supply that with new information. We have to meet the potential user and the current user where they are. Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't mean that we stay there, but we have to meet them where they are. Mm-hmm. And then we have to walk them together. So in addition to those resources, we do hope to collaborate more with you guys at Taylor Hooten Foundation and other anti-doping entities. A lot of them have taken a hit because of the inactivity of the pandemic, and also because of the fact that it's not a glamorous topic. It's not a topic that people want to hear. To your point, people really want the easy route from A to Z, not knowing that there are a lot of twists and turns and curves, and there are a lot of failures that are associated with training. So we just live in that type of world these days where instant gratification rules the day. And so it's a struggle to work against that. There are new steroids that are popping up on the market, and then there are newer steroids that are in the works that are not on the market yet. And so we have to find a way to anticipate that, and then to meet that challenge. We have to work with law enforcement, and we have to educate law enforcement. They are sort of, conditioned to view a topic a particular way, but the bodybuilding subculture that is really driven by steroids, it doesn't work that way. So everyone has to be educated. And I have to always undergo continuous education in this subject area, or else I'm going to be really preaching old news to a new target. They'll know that what I'm talking about is outdated, and I won't have an audience anymore.
You're right. It's ever evolving. The lingo constantly changes. The drugs are constantly changing. How you administer the drugs are changing. So, but you're absolutely right. It is going to be an ongoing effort. One of the last things, Keith, I want to talk with you about is a T-shirt that you sell, and I know you do that to raise money, and it has a very direct message on it. In fact, I own one myself, and I think we got a picture of you and I in Chicago in it. But it says, "No juice in this tank. Only users need steroids." Tell us what moved you to making this shirt, and what message are you trying to send to people?
Well, it's not as popular as your shirt. I'll tell you that right now.
We might have the upper hand with some baseball players wearing them.
Well, but thank you, my friend, for wearing it. I appreciate that. And I do wear your shirt. Your shirt is on our social media page as well. I really love your shirt. So No Juice in This Tank was really inspired after the death of Greg. And it's just, rather than me lecturing a person, verbally, that has the potential to go nowhere or to become very volatile in of itself, it's on the shirt, and it's a bold, it's a simple message, and it's a matter of fact. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you learn from it, you can't unlearn it. It's there. Even a lot of bodybuilders in the gym, when they see the shirt, I see them turning away, and they're intentionally trying to avoid the shirt. So I intentionally turn to show them the shirt with the message. And so what it simply means is
I love that.
The tank is your message. The tank is you. The tank is your God-given, vessel that he created, knowing what he's doing in order for you to navigate on this earth. You treat the tank that he has given you well. It's on loan. You don't own that tank. It's on loan for as long as he has you here. And no juice being steroids, no juice in this tank, a matter of fact. Now, when you're in the gym, you are building this tank to be tough. And so that is also a secondary meaning of the tank. But it's a declaration. It's a declaration that I'm bad enough to accomplish what I accomplish without using chemicals. And so let's see me do it. And I tell you what, Don, I laugh when I see a guy who's not juiced up lift about the same amount of weight as a guy who is juiced up. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see it a lot. And if I don't see it, I work with that guy, I work with that girl in order to get them there. And they get there. I'm not a personal trainer, but if you're willing to hear me and have me, I'll show you some things as Greg showed us, and they work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of people, I would say more than a handful of people that have used steroids during their lifetime. And many of them will tell you, while they thought they were stronger while they're using a cycle, they've got juice in the tank. Juice, obviously the slang term for anabolic steroids. They said they were always stronger and felt better when they weren't on a cycle and they had no juice in the tank, and they were doing it without obviously anabolic steroids, which I always wish, like, can you share that message with other people so that they can hear that, you don't need the drugs to be strong. You don't need the drugs to change your physique. And here's my personal experience.
Well, that's true. You don't. I've come across some people, they really were impressed with themselves. So while they were taking steroids, I even heard a couple of people sort of mouth off to their own group, "Oh, I'm so impressed with myself," or "I'm scared of myself." But when they get off of steroids, they are happier with their whole physical fitness routine, with their regimen. They have a better understanding of what physical fitness is, and they have a clarity of mind. They will have a clarity of mind because steroids is also a mind-altering drug. But what I do, and I just had this conversation over the weekend with a batch of young guys who are about to go to college who are considering doing steroids, and I always tell them, hey, you never get something for nothing. It's like those you know, those shows where you have an evil wizard or a witch or an evil doctor, and they make this unbelievable offer to grant someone their physical desires with some magic potion or a green apple or whatever it is. And then only after the helpless victim commits to the apple or the potion and they guzzle it down, does the evil witch talk about warnings. What, now a warning? You know? And it's the same thing with steroids. I always ask the guys in the gym, what are you going for when you're in here? Are you going for size or strength or both? And based upon that answer, do you know what it takes in order to get there? How long are you willing to take in order to go through this process? Because it's a process. And we're talking about it takes a while. This is a long game. Me, I'm in my 50s. And so if they're only looking at length in terms of their understanding of it, then something needs correcting. Mm-hmm. But people are in a rush and they tend to resort to, steroids and, which will give them, like I said, a good 5 to 10 years. But then after that, they all develop those major side effects that are irreversible. That could have been avoided if they were to have reversed back then. Sure, you can lift the world in the early years of your steroid use, but your body won't respond in the latter years. Yeah. You will have wrung out all of the benefit of the tissue. Plus, you'll start to incur these side effects. So 70 to 90% of the male users will experience one of the side effects that causes us guys to cringe, which is testicular atrophy. Mm-hmm. That's not just experience, that's the whole package that undergoes shrinkage, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know what testicular atrophy is it's when your balls shrink up.
Shrink.
Some people listen, yeah.
I'm trying to be clean.
I appreciate it, but sometimes, especially when we're delivering programs, I just got to get to the point on that because testicular atrophy, is that what it means? Yes, that's exactly what it means.
Right. And in the bodybuilding world, you can tell when you have a new bodybuilder and you see them age through and you look at their competition photos, it's like, you're kidding me or what? Wow. What happened? Are you now an anatomically incorrect Ken doll or what? What are we looking at here?
Exactly.
And the same percentage of the female users will experience an abnormally large, this is just simply being biological, abnormally large clitoris.
Yep.
Nearly all of the users will suffer enlarged hearts. Yep. Again, because the roid is going to it will route itself to the muscle that it is used the most, which is your heart.
Yeah.
Then your glutes, your hamstrings. And as I said before, the heart attacks are more painful than ever. This is the type of stuff that I lay out on the line. Even on some of the back of my No Juice in this thing t-shirts, I'll even have a bio with a picture of a bodybuilder who's died recently. And I have too many of those shirts that are customized to show a new bodybuilder that's died. What we haven't even talked about is the fact that steroids and also HGH, in addition to increased risk of cancer, will introduce autoimmune disease. Mm-hmm. So some of our Iranian bodybuilders, and really steroids is huge in Iran. So Bayatollah Abbaspour and others, Muhammad Salama, they are dying from autoimmune disease where your body is turning on itself. Who knew that this was facing them? So these are a lot of the discussions that the website talk about and that I talk about when I'm in a face-to-face interaction. Mm-hmm. Sometimes my No Juice in this tank t-shirt will sort of spark a conversation, and I'll have to stop because this is a prime opportunity that I can't give up. Yeah. So usually my workouts are long, but I have to do it.
Yep.
And they come back around and they thank me for it. But again, nothing is free. The price that you think you're paying in currency, that's not the total price of steroid use. You find it out.
Yeah, it's a long term. Now, if you had the opportunity to send just one message to those who are thinking about using anabolic steroids, what message would that be?
go to Taylor Hooten Foundation, look at their resources, go to Steroidalysis, look at their resources. I have a friend in Germany, Jörg Borgeson, who was a former competing bodybuilder who had to stop abruptly because of his heart attacks. Mm-hmm. There's a former bodybuilder, Tom Prince, who was hawkish and on all the muscle magazines. He's now thinner than you are. And I'd say we have to go through the process of a reality check because there's a lot of misinformation out there. You need to be exposed to, then make the decision. I ultimately would caution against doing that, but the choice is yours. Of course, when you make the choice, you have to face the consequences, not just health-wise, but legally too. Exactly. It still is Class 3 felony. It's a felony to possess and distribute. That comes with a 5-year sentence and a $250,000 fine, plus more if there are more felonies that can be attached. So let's do a reality check and find another way. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, basically what it sums it up is educate yourself. And if you're going to use these drugs, at least you've made an educated decision to know what your legal ramifications are, but most importantly, what the health ramifications are. And, Keith, this has been awesome. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm so thankful that, we both had the time together to talk about the great work that you're doing in the anti-doping space. But before I let you go, as part of our All Me podcast, we have a section of questions that are called our curveball questions. So what I'm going to ask of you is I'm going to throw 3 questions your way. We'll go one at a time. And just the first thing that comes to mind, just shoot from the hip and answer it. Does that make sense?
Oh, wow.
All right.
Uh-oh.
You better have your brain ready on this one. Okay. The first question is, what is the wallpaper you currently have on the screen of your cell phone?
The screen of my cell phone, I have a corporate jet, the interior of a corporate jet.
Outstanding. Got big goals then.
Yes.
When you get that jet, come on down to Texas and give me a ride, man.
I will scoop you up.
I'd appreciate that. I would say I'd throw in for gas, but I might just have to give you my whole credit card.
Yes.
All right. So if you could have any job in the world, what would it be?
I would go back to architecture.
Okay.
Yeah, I would go back to architecture. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's imagine you're independently wealthy and money wasn't an object. What would you do for a living and how would you spend your time?
I would probably own my own center that really, it would be a mega rehab facility. I've always thought about this, but it wouldn't be the same type of drug or behavioral health rehab facility. It would be a combo type of facility that maybe cleans up a person, sets some really major expectations of that person that I'm cleaning up, and it will come with a very robust educational program and job training program. Yeah,
I love that.
I would do that.
You would give back. Awesome. Well, Keith, thank you, man, for joining the All Me podcast. We really appreciate it.
We should have done this a long time ago. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Yes, you are my friend. You've been my friend for a long time. And I really do respect you and your father and your family and what they do, how they've taken this tragedy into a victory. And I always refer people to you and your family as the best way to get that done. Keep up the good work. Look to many new things, exciting things from you and the Taylor Hooten Foundation. Much appreciated.
Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks for listening to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, a nonprofit organization leading a national campaign to enlighten people to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances and inspiring people to live and compete without the use of these substances. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and tune in to our next episode.